Toby Young, Lance Price, thank you very much. Great to have your responses to today's extraordinary news. Thank you very much indeed. Now, let's hear from, we mentioned the Conservatives there, let's hear from Michael Fallon, the Defence Secretary. He's been giving his reaction to the election of Jeremy Corbyn. He was speaking just in the last couple of hours.
This is a very serious moment for our country. This election shows that Labour is now a serious risk to our national security, to our economic security, and to the security of your family.
So, let's get this straight. Your reaction to this overwhelming victory by Jeremy Corbyn is to rerun that election strategy of basically trying to scare British people about it?
No, this election shows that Labour now poses a very serious risk to our security, our national security, because they would undermine our defences, to our economic security, because there'll be taxes on jobs, taxes on earnings, and more borrowing, and to the security of every family. That would affect all working people.
And just finally, on your role as Defence Secretary, do you now think that Labour really are serious under Jeremy Corbyn about Trident, about changing what goes on at Faslane?
Well, this government is serious about keeping Britain safe. But this election shows that Labour are now putting that at risk. They're a risk to our national security. They would undermine our defences. But more than that, they're a risk to our economic security. They would pile taxes on jobs and earnings, and that will affect all working people.
The Defence Secretary talking to our political correspondent Robin Brandt. Well, we must assess the picture in Scotland as well, of course, because Labour all but wiped out in the general election, losing so many seats to the SNP in particular. Let's cross to Glasgow. Our correspondent Andrew Kerr is there, and give us a flavour of what you've been hearing in the last few hours, Andrew.
Yes, Jane, well, obviously delight from Team Corbyn here in Scotland. Some Corbyn supporters were watching in a pub in Glasgow when the announcement was made. Some tears of joy seen. They say Labour has now voted for a new type of politics. Great news for Scotland and the UK, but a lot of hard work needs to be done, and that starts right now. Kezia Dugdale, the new Scottish Labour leader, she leads, as you say, a very different Labour Party here in Scotland. They only have one MP after the 2015 election. Back in 2010, they sent 41 MPs down to Westminster. Now, she says Jeremy Corbyn promises radical politics, and she's going to work hard with him. He's expected in Scotland in the next few days. But of course, during the leadership campaign, she said that a Corbyn win would leave Labour carping from the sidelines. But yesterday she was telling me that Jeremy Corbyn would make a credible Labour Prime Minister. Also very interesting to hear reaction from the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon. We caught up with her a little earlier today.
I congratulate Jeremy Corbyn on his victory. I hope we can work with him in a progressive alliance against Tory austerity. I also hope he gives a very early commitment that Labour MPs will vote with the SNP against the renewal of Trident. But you know, the reality is Jeremy Corbyn leads a deeply and bitterly divided Labour Party, and unless he can very quickly demonstrate that Labour's got a credible chance of winning a UK general election, then people in Scotland are going to conclude there's little point in voting Labour, and that actually the only alternative to continued Tory government might well be independence.
And that, Jane, is a very, very important point. Jeremy Corbyn could be manna from heaven for the SNP. We've been hearing about Labour's electoral chances in 2020, and if another Conservative government is elected then that perhaps means that another independence referendum is all the more likely. But the next electoral test for Labour here in Scotland is not 2020, it's 2016 at May's Holyrood election. It will be very interesting to see if there's any type of Corbyn bounce here, but the SNP are of course still riding very high in the polls here in Scotland. They won almost 50% of the popular vote in the general election. Jane, it's back to you.
All right, Andrew, many thanks. Andrew Kerr there in Glasgow. In the last few minutes, we've also had a reaction to Jeremy Corbyn's election from Gerry Adams of Sinn Féin. Let's hear what he's been saying to journalists.
Well, I understand that Jeremy Corbyn has been elected as leader of the Labour Party, and I think that's good. It's a matter for the Labour Party, of course, to choose their own leader, but I know him for a very, very, very long time. He was a pioneer in peacemaking. He talked to Sinn Féin when others wouldn't, and we were all in elected office at that time. He's a friend of Ireland. He will be an outstanding leader of his party. Party, he obviously has a huge challenge in terms of the big defeat that they had, but he's a very authentic activist, and I welcome very much, and I wish him well for the future.
Gerry Adams there. Well, lastly, this half hour, let's just hear from the man whose decision to step down led to where we are today, from Ed Miliband, who was talking to journalists at his home in North London. He spoke very soon after it was announced that Jeremy Corbyn was the new leader. Let's hear from Ed Miliband.
Well, I congratulate Jeremy Corbyn on a very clear victory in the Labour leadership election. I congratulate Tom Watson as having been elected as deputy leader. I'll be offering Jeremy Corbyn my support, and I hope people across the party do so too. I hope also, and I expect him to do this, that Jeremy reaches out to all parts of the party, because he has a big job to do to seek to unite the party, and I believe he does intend to do that, and I hope he does.
But this is a complete annihilation of your party now, isn't it?
I don't believe that. Look, Jeremy's won a very clear victory. He's won a victory in all sections of the party. I believe we should respect that mandate. At the same time, I believe he has a big responsibility. And it's a big responsibility, a responsibility that I remember from my time as leader, to use the talents of people who didn't vote for him, who may have said things about him in the leadership election that weren't particularly complimentary, but to reach out and to use every part of our party. Our party is a broad church, always has been, always will be, and the task of the leader is to reach all parts of that movement, and I believe that's what Jeremy should do.
But with these rule changes, maybe the church was too broad, because you had entryism on all levels, and it caused huge problems for you.
You know, anybody looking at this result in a fair-minded way will not believe it's about that. It's about the fact that right across our party, party members, party supporters, affiliated supporters, they voted for Jeremy Corbyn. Now, I believe it's a massive opportunity for our party. People wouldn't have believed it was possible to have a political party of over 500,000 people, 500,000 members and supporters. In my own constituency, we've seen the numbers go up significantly, more than double. Now, I think part of the task is to turn those people from people who voted in the leadership election and deputy leadership election into people who are an active part of the party, building Labour in the community.
The former Labour leader Ed Miliband speaking there in North London earlier. We will have continuing reaction here at Westminster to a, well, extraordinary day. We've used the word a lot today, but it really has been quite something to witness. Much more reaction. We'll be talking in the next hour to Ipsos Mori, among others, and a number of other commentators as well. That's all coming up after 5. Right now, let's find out what's happening with the weather. Nick Miller can tell us. Hello, Nick.
Hi Jamie, we've seen some thundery downpours sweeping through north-east England. Scarborough on the North Yorkshire coast had 11 millimetres of rain, and the